One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Have you been wanting to start a podcast? You've been thinking about it. It feels right. You just know this is the next thing that my business needs. Well, I encourage you to sign up for my 5-day podcast bootcamp. This is a thing that you have been looking for. It is a 5-day video series where I walk you through exactly how to start, launch, and market your podcast. And I throw in some more information about planning strategies and being consistent and how you can make the most out of your podcast from day one. So sign up for our 5-day Create Your Podcast Bootcamp at crystalprofit.com/podcast bootcamp. And do it already. You know that you've been wanting to, so just bite the bullet and join us. A question that I've seen a lot lately is, should I have seasons for my podcast? And that's really what I want to dive in today, because there are some nuances that I want you to consider and some things that I don't know that a lot of people think about, this, like the way that seasons were created, like what they're actually intended for. So I want to share with you my thoughts on seasons for your podcast today. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Because if you've been thinking about creating a podcast for a while, well, I'm so glad you found this show. Think of this as the shortcut / time-saving version of searching Google and YouTube for hours and hours trying to figure out the world of podcasting. Trust me, as a busy mama of 3, I get it. You don't have a lot of time to be spent or wasted, I should say, searching the web, trying to find all the right ideas and all the amazing things that are out there, and you just end up overwhelmed. Trust me, I've been there, done that, took home the souvenir. But this podcast is going to help you in practical ways, because twice a week we'll be delivering episodes that are going to give you steps to help you create a podcast your audience can't wait to listen to. So let's get right to it, shall we? Okay, so we are back today for another question from the community. And a question that I've seen lately is, should I have seasons for my podcast? And I have lots of thoughts on this, but if you just want like the quick and dirty answer of how I feel about seasons, I think you should have one season. You should have one season and keep going for the life of your podcast, not multiple seasons and confusing seasons. And like, oh my gosh, y'all, I recorded a whole YouTube video about this, and it was just, it was even hard to talk about, even just to talk about seasons and when it would be a great time. There are I'm going to share with you a few reasons to have a season. I've said season like so many times in the past like 20 minutes. It's ridiculous, but I want you to really take into account a very good reason why you need seasons. See, I'm a poet. Y'all didn't know it. For your podcast. Because I don't have seasons. It is one long, continuous podcast. Like right now, we are on season 1, episode, oh my gosh, I have to look and see what episode. Episode 128. Like we're on episode 128 of the first season of this podcast. And if I were to tell you, oh no, wait, that's actually season 3, episode 24, you would say, what? That's season 1? Season 2, episode 24, like it just gets very confusing if you don't have a really good reason to have seasons for your podcast. I love that I've said reason and season so many times, but just stick with me here. We will get through this together. So I just want to throw that out there. That is my stance on seasons, but I'm going to give you a few other instances where you could use seasons for your podcast. And if this applies to you, then you should use them. If it doesn't, don't use them. That's the moral of the story here, okay? But I can see where having seasons would be worthwhile. If you have a seasonal podcast, like actual seasonal related to something that's happening throughout the year, then that would work. So I'm recording this right now and we just had the Super Bowl, right? It hasn't been that long ago. It was just last weekend that we had the Super Bowl, Shakira and J-Lo, like the whole thing. Like, oh my gosh, it was crazy, insane, amazing. Like it was so awesome. But NFL, like football's over. And so next season will happen in the fall. And that is when we'll have a brand new season. So if you have a podcast about sports or something related to sports or something related to something that only happens a few times a year, then I can see you having seasons. I actually see this a lot in some of my other podcasting communities that I'm a part of. There will be people that say, oh, we just finished our first season, and maybe they podcast for like 6 months and then they take a break. So the reason why I'm telling you to not do seasons is because I don't think that you should have that kind of podcast model. I think if you're going to podcast, you need to show up every single week, not 6 months out of the year. You need to show up every single week. So even if you have a sports podcast right now, then I still want you to podcast, keep talking about the season that just happened, or talk about what you're excited that's coming up in the fall. Like, are there any, recruits that you're looking for? Are there any changes in the league? Like, what are the behind the scenes things? Like, you could talk about the first assistant coach being female for the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, guys, that's groundbreaking. That's crazy, like cool news that you could keep talking about. Like, there's so many things that you could talk about, in between seasons, but like I said, that's not the model that I teach. I don't want you podcasting a few months out of the year. I want you to podcast year round, at least once a week, come rain or shine, come hell or high water. I want you to have a podcast out into the world. And the reason is because I want you to be top of mind. Like, I'm teaching entrepreneurs how to get in front of their audience and stay there and be top of mind and create authority in your field. And you can't do that if you're only showing up. You're like, oh, I'll come back in 6 more months. Maybe I'll get some traction. And this is totally not related to what we're talking about, but it kind of is. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about how when kids, they play a sport, right? And you're jumping from sport to sport. Maybe you play soccer in the fall, then you play basketball, then you play baseball, and then you do this. And then it's kind of like you go, it's seasons. It's a seasonal thing. But the kids that get a whole lot of momentum are the ones that play year round, right? So you play fall soccer with one league, and then in the winter, maybe you play an indoor league. And then in the spring, you play again. And then in the summer, maybe you do a camp. Like those kids are going to be those star athletes because they do it year round. Now, I have my own opinions about club sports and how, I do think that you can totally burn out kids with club sports and having them in activities all the time whenever they're not on board. Like they don't really have the heart in it. I think if they love it and they really, really want to do it, that's a different story. But just to keep shoving it at them, that's a totally different thing. Man, we're getting all kinds of topics today, but that's what it is like, you're going into this season and you get all this momentum, talking about the kids on this team. Like they start off kind of rocky. They don't really know what they're doing, together as a team. And then all of a sudden that last game, you're like, oh my gosh, like all this practice, all this hard work, everything just clicked. And now they're done with this season. Now they'll probably never be on the same team with all of these kids again, unless everybody signs up and everybody keeps going together like throughout the year. That's probably it for that team. So I don't want that to happen with your podcast. I don't want you to go from one season to the next. Like you podcast for 6 months, and then you take a long break, and then you come back and you're like, crap, man, all my momentum's gone. It's gone. I had it 6 months ago. Now I'm starting from scratch again. But if instead, what I would love to see you do is go all year long, and maybe you go harder during like the times whenever you're in the off season, quote unquote, for a sport. Let's just say you're a sports podcaster. If you're in the off season, keep talking, keep it more casual, make your episode shorter, but still keep that connection with your audience because it's so hard to get it back. Once you get that momentum, and then I see this all the time when people take breaks over the holidays, and I'm like, I'd rather see you put out a 5-minute gratitude episode on Thanksgiving than take Thanksgiving off. Even if it's just 5 minutes of you saying, and people are like, oh, but no one's going to listen to it because it's Thanksgiving and it's this. And I'm like, well, a lot of people I know in this community are probably cooking, or they're probably helping somebody, or they're on the road, or they're doing something. Like they are doing activities that could still allow them to listen to a podcast, right? Like if they're taking their dog on a walk, they could still listen to a 5-minute podcast. So that's my mentality behind keeping it going throughout the year, even through the holidays, even through all the seasons of your life, because that is how you really gain momentum. But if you keep slipping in and out of people's like brand awareness, they're like, oh, wait, yeah, there's that Crystal chick. What does she do again? I've seen her before, but she hasn't really been around. So she's probably not really like, maybe she's doing something different now. Maybe, that's good for her. But I've already found somebody else that has kept showing up for me throughout the year. So I'm just going to go follow them instead. So that is that is just what I believe, guys. Like to my core, that is what I believe is if you want to be top of mind and you want to be the authority in your field. I know y'all, guys, I have connected with so many of you. So many of you are coaches. So many of you are trying to grow your brand. You're trying to grow your business. You're trying to grow your awareness in your industry. And you cannot do that if you are slipping in and out of people's like subconscious. Whenever I think of, let's say, digital courses, right? As soon as someone mentions digital courses, I immediately think of Amy Porterfield because she is top of mind. I see her every single week posting on social about her podcast. Whenever I think about, motivation and all this stuff, I think about Rachel Hollis because I see her. She's putting out YouTube videos. She's putting out podcasts. Like she's literally everywhere. And so if you keep showing up, you have the opportunity to be an Amy Porterfield or a Rachel Hollis, but if you're not even putting that effort in, it's not going to happen. It's not. Like it's not even a possibility because you're just like, well, I tried for a few months and it's not working. And I've seen questions about getting more downloads and like, how do I do this? And I can't do that. I can't get any traction. And I'm just like, just keep showing up. That's literally half of the battle is showing up. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be pretty sometimes. Like, you just have to keep going and keep showing up to make sure that you're going to be in the position to really take off and have that momentum. That way, when, someone shows up, they've taken off 3 seasons, but now they're like, oh, it's the 4th season. Like, I'm ready. Like, I'm coming in hot. And you're like, yeah, but I already, like, you have to catch up now. You got to catch up to my level because I've been doing this all year. That is what is going to make you stand out from the competition, is if you are showing up year round, delivering amazing value, amazing content to your audience, you are going to be top of mind. You are going to be the Amy Porterfield and the Rachel Hollis and the person that people automatically think of when they think about your industry and your category. Y'all, I got so much more fired up about this than I thought I was going to. I'm sitting here looking at my notes and I'm like, oh, I covered some of that, but most of what I said today was totally off script because it's really how I feel about it. I don't think that you should have seasons for your podcast because it confuses your audience. That's another really big thing. I can't even imagine if you have a website and you're like, oh, go to crystalprofit.com/episode S1 for season 1, episode 124, no, wait, hang on. That's season 6 episode. But like, oh my gosh, that makes my brain hurt as like someone who has a website and like doing all those things. Like, no. If someone were to tell me that and it wasn't something very easy to remember or to figure out, I would just be like, nah, it's not worth it. And in this day and age, people don't have the patience. They don't have the patience to deal with that. Maybe you could have gotten away with that 10 years ago, but people, y'all, we have 5G now. Like 5G is like, it's here and everything is about to like the attention span is going to get shorter because everything's getting faster. Technology is getting so much faster. So in order to jump on this bandwagon and really just kind of strap yourself to the podcasting rocket, you've got to get on board, keep showing up every single week and make everything that you do as easy for your audience as possible to consume your content. Because I don't have the patience. If someone tells me to go do this, but then there's like 4 extra steps in it, I'm like, no, I give up. I quit. I'm like, I don't even have time. I don't have time to mess with this. I just want the answer and I want to find something and like, boom, that's it. Like one click, like Amazon ruined all of us with the 1-click order, right? Because that's what we want. We want to click on something, know that it's the thing for us. And if it's not, I'm going somewhere else. So like I said, this episode took a total different spin than what I had originally intended, but it's the truth. It's really how I feel about seasons. And if you don't need it for any like real reason, keep it like, go to your podcast hosting site, like in Buzzsprout. If you're a Buzzsprout user, go in there. At the very bottom, you'll see where you input episode and season number. Do season 1 and whatever episode number it is, and just keep going that way. Just go down that route. Don't mess with seasons. They're confusing. Like, just stop it. Just go. Season 1, episode number, and keep going. That is my advice. Take it or leave it. That's how I feel about it. And I know you're here to hear what I have to say because you're listening to this podcast, and I hope that you value all the content that I'm teaching you here. But I really think that if you keep it as simple as possible, then you're going to succeed. You're going to add even more value to your audience by being less confusing. So that's all I have for you today. So I hope that you enjoyed this. If this is your first time tuning in, what a doozy to join us. Oh my gosh. Like, thank you for being here. Thank you for getting this far in the episode and listening. Make sure that you hit subscribe. That way you don't miss any future episodes. You can check out the show notes for this episode at crystalprofit.com/episode 128. And keep it up, guys. Keep it up. because we all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners, thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.